All right. Like I was saying, the reason y'all are here tonight is to learn how to talk on frequency a little bit better and learn a little bit about air traffic control. So, without further ado, please help me welcome your headliners. They are air traffic controllers that came all the way from the Bay Area and all the way from the other side of the airport. Please welcome Steve Ingebretson and Justin Martin.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear it all right? It's showing? For the Zoom, is this okay? Volume? Okay. So, let's see. I'm a little in awe. There's so many people here that I know that are just amazing pilots, and you feel like, why am I talking to these people? They know what they're doing. And so few times do I have to talk to you guys, but it's a lot of questions that come up, and I'm hoping I can help fill a lot of holes and make it easier for everyone. So, let's see, it's going to work okay. Not going to work. Okay. Let's see. Which one? I'll use that one.
There you go. It's got a laser pointer too.
Okay.
Careful.
Just go. Oh. I've never used it. Let's go down. There we go. You got it. Okay. Okay. All right. As you know why you're here, so I put that on there. Some of the things we're going to try and touch on, and then get questions, I hope, to feedback our, operations at Truckee Tower. We're talking with Oakland Center, the local ATC facilities. Most of you know this tower, Oakland Center takes care of our airspace above us, does the IFR. We also have NorCal around us, so it's important to understand how that all fits in too. We're going to talk about no radio communication, and there we go. And a lot of ways that people don't do things right. A lot of the basic 101 stuff is, it's like who you are, where you are, what you want, that's what's really important. Full call sign. Please, I love full call signs. If you want to call yourself something like 888, that's fine. I can do it once. After that, I got to use the right way. So I hope you understand. And type aircraft. A lot of people, they'll say November. They won't say anything. Just say their call sign. For us, it makes a difference because I know it makes a difference in speed, even from a Skyhawk to a Skylane to a Mooney. It can make a big difference in speeds. What I'm going to give you, what could work out in the plan. We got the bigger picture, so that's why we're there. So what we want is also give us, full stop, whether you can do closed traffic, short approach. The sooner you give me the information, the better I can make my plan. On short final, I'd like to sit there and do the option. I got jet behind you. I'm sorry, full stop or go around now. So there's just things like that I'm trying to do. When the ATIS information comes up, please give us what it is. Information November, information Papa. It may sound simple. We have the information, we have the ATIS, doesn't work because you may have an ATIS that's an hour or two old. Something takes, may sound funny, but if you take off here and you go to, say, down to San Carlos, something like that, has nothing to do with us, something happens, they're going to come back and talk to us, say, why didn't you make sure you had the right ATIS? So it's really important. Please give us that. Yeah, you can say you got the numbers, you got the wind and the altimeter, but there may be NOTAM information. I don't know you got which runway we're on. So that kind of thing is very, very important to me. So if you're IFR inbound, I think most of you know this, Oakland Center is going to make sure that you do have the ATIS, but we may repeat stuff. Things change, so if it's different from what we have, it also the wind starts kicking up. We try to keep you informed all the time. So, and I think a lot of you have seen that. So, but don't hesitate to say wind check or get an update. There's no problem with that at all either. This is just a picture of the ATIS and things that we got to put on there. This is our digital ATIS that we put things on. And it gives basic information. You've all heard it, but it helps a lot. It really helps a lot with us as far as cutting down the verbiage, and that's why it's important. Because if you don't give us, you got the right ATIS, I got to do it all over. So that's a waste of time. So appreciate you doing that. I had questions about light guns. Something should happen, and so I actually was able to tell someone. I knew who it was that asked, and when she was taxiing in, I says, look up at the tower. And so I gave her the lights. So oh, can you walk around the tower? Yeah, we can walk around. Please, anybody come up and visit. You're welcome to do that. And I'm more than happy to do it for anybody who's taxing out, taxing in, coming in. They want to see the light, see what it looks like. It's great. The more you know, the easier, more comfortable it gets. We don't have to use it much. I think I've used the light twice in the almost 8 years I've been here. So, but it's nice to know what you have an option. This is basic information. You all know how it works on the ground, in the air. It's pretty much a stop sign, stop light. So you see a red, might want to question it. If you're no radio, a lot of people, it's happened. They've called me on the phone. That's fine. Call me. And we'll work something out. I'll be looking for you. So we can do things like that and look for a light. Sometimes you can hear me. Sometimes you just talk to me on the phone. And we never had that technology when I was first starting to learn to fly, and a lot of you is probably the same thing. So it's a nice tool to use. So use what we can. Make it safe. If you can hear us, that's huge. We had that the other day. Pilot could hear us, rocking their wings. It was perfect. It was easy to work with. Nighttime, it's going to be a little different. You got your position lights, your landing lights, things like that can flash that we know you got that. So it's just another way of making it work. Let's see. Ailerons, we may not see you moving your aileron if you're on the ground, but if you're on the ground, give us a call. We'll look, then we'll watch. We'll pay more attention. So readbacks, this is huge. A lot of you are wondering why we always get on and say, read back, hold short instructions, read back the runway assignment. These are all things that we're required to do. And again, it just adds to more verbiage. During the slow time right now, it's not bad, but things get busy and you don't get a read back. Verify you have information pop up. Verify holding short, read back, holding short runway 20 on Alpha. Verify your taxi runway 29. I have people tell me the wrong runway all the time. Negative. So we do it again. So reading back is huge. It will ingrain into your mind what you're doing and help me to know that you are doing it. So I can trust you to do it. Many times I'm talking to people and they're moving right along on taxiway Alpha going to 29, and I need them to hold short at 2 or 20. And so I'll call back, just verify holding short, so if you had said it, I trust it a lot more. And if you're in doubt, let me know, ask, it's not a problem. Here's a common one, Cessna, everybody knows this one. Cessna 910 Hotel, runway 29, taxi via Alpha, hold short runway 2. Roger? Totally worthless to me, totally worthless. So I got to say it over again or read back hold short instructions, whichever it is they miss. Sometimes they'll say runway 29 or Roger. I mean, it's just, you're professional, you're all professionals. To get this far, you all know what you're doing. Teach other people to do the same thing. Please, advise them what's the right way to do it, and it'll save a lot of time. It'll really save a lot of time. Another one, this is 910 Hotel, ready for departure. 910 Hotel, hold short runway 29 traffic on 1 mile final. Same thing, Roger. Holding short, no call sign, no runway. It's so we have different, we depart off different runways here, so it's very precarious. So we make sure, who was it? We don't even know if, it could be we're holding the Cub, or we're trying to depart a Mooney, and we have to know. We have to know, or else we're going to call back and say, just verify. So it just takes up time. So, and if you're unfamiliar, please, again, ask. You know what to do. As you can see, most of you have been in the air, you've seen this picture, but the taxiways and runways, they're not complicated, but the sign, it can be difficult sometimes to see where to go. You get new pilots, instructors, and so on, help them out, find where to look for things, and more than happy to help out if they're not sure. So I just had one today and started slowing down, wondering if it's taxiway golf. It says, next left turn is taxiway golf, cross runway 29 on golf. It's just, we're always trying to watch, make sure and follow up. That's our job, to follow up. Classic one, clear for the option. We've had people go for the option and they do a short approach. Well, you're allowed to do all these, full stop, go around, low approach, touch and go, stop and go. But a short approach, you're not allowed to do unless you request it and get permission. I think you can imagine why. It has to do with timing. It has to do with, that I may have somebody departing and you start doing a short approach. I may not have the spacing on the runway for that. So unfortunately, you're going to go around. Unless you got a real problem, it's emergency, that's different. But, and I think it's great to practice engine out procedures with short approach, all that, more than happy to accommodate as much as we can. So occasionally we'll say clear for the option except stop and go. That's just because we don't have the spacing because somebody coming in behind them. But other than that, it usually works out pretty well. So please just, and then let me know in advance you're coming in. Again, like I said, if you're going to know you're going to be in the pattern, you want to do something special, the sooner I know, the better I can do. Special VFR this morning was great. Special VFR. A lot of people forget about it. You know, they want to do something to get out or get in. More than happy to accommodate as long as we got what's needed. You know, miling, be clear clouds. And it's really important. I'm conservative here about calling my weather because I see it. It happened this morning. It was trending, going nice. And all of a sudden, within about a minute, it turned around. It went from a scattered layer back to a broken layer. It just blew right back in. So I just get pretty conservative about things. And I had a jet go around because he couldn't see it. Well, he thought, you know, we had it, but 2 minutes earlier, he would have had it. So you can request special VFR if you're not, you know, comfortable with your cloud clearances coming in, even if we're VFR at the airport. And the reason being is it allows you now to get lower. You can reduce your distance from the clouds to come in. You just have to stay clear of clouds. Where if you're VFR, then you know your cloud clearances. You know, 500 below, 1,000 above, 2,000 horizontal, you can now reduce that. So if you feel like you need that, ask for it. We can do that. Yeah, a lot of you want to do practice approaches. There has been a lot of stuff with the FAA because people were on a practice approach doing VFR and they thought they were treating it like their IFR. We're happy to help out, but we have certain verbiage we have to use and let you know, maintain VFR, practice approach is approved, but no separation services are provided. We're not going to tell you, you know, we're going to advise you of traffic, but we're not going to give you separation like you do with an IFR. So number one, we can't, we're a VFR tower, but it still allows things to keep going and people to make sure they understand you're not IFR. So kind of a little different phraseology too with circling for the runway. You're coming on 20, you want to circle to 29 to land, you know, circle to the southwest for left downwind runway 29er. People get a little bit confused sometimes, like you weren't sure understand that, but that is the verbiage that's used for a lot of approaches. So it's just letting you know where you should circle. And then I just say, please, you know, advise when commencing circle. I always want to know when you're going to start. RNAV alpha is just a RNAV coming in from the west that allows you to get to the airport, but then it doesn't say what to do. So we appoint what we want you to do, and then you let us know when you're going to start the turns. So just so you understand that it's just a little different. Instead of saying, you know, left traffic runway 29 and report downwind, it's just we're advising when you feel comfortable to do it, just to let us know. So, and we do that with the practice too, just so that's what it's there for, to get better at IFR situations. Trying to keep it sweet, short. Tower tours, please come up. We enjoy people coming up. These give the tower hours, but if you call and say you want to come up, we're usually more than happy to accommodate unless it's just something different. Friday, we got a check ride going on for one of our new guys doing a really good job. I'd prefer you not come up then, but other than that, that's about it, you know? So, because it gives a whole different perspective. I love getting up. I got a bunch of flight time, not near as much as many of you, but I got quite a bit of flight time, and the whole perspective in the air is totally different. It's great. So perspective from the tower will help out a lot. And that starts adding on. There was a couple other questions that came up, and I think I'll just work with Justin on these questions because they kind of intermingle. So I'd like to introduce Justin Martin from Oakland Center, and these guys do an amazing job helping us out. So we'll get you
Yep.
Yeah,
I'll grab
thanks.
that. I'll grab that.
Yeah.
Grab the clicker from you. The clicker. This thing.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, everybody. I know I've seen some of you before. This is my third time coming up here to talk to you guys, and I really, really enjoy it. And I do these around the Bay Area as well. Done a few at San Carlos. Did one at Burning Man last year. So I do my best to, you know, I really like, you know, engaging with the flying community. I'm a pilot myself. I flew up here today in fractional ownership Dakota that I have. So, you know, I love aviation. You know, I love being a controller. I love flying, and I really like the community outreach. So It's just kind of my intro. I've been in Oakland for 10 years, originally from the East Coast. We're going to go over some topics today. So I'll go over a brief Oakland Center familiarization, talk a little bit about the airspace and what we do at Oakland Center as a whole. Then we'll talk about operations overview, what en route controller duties are. Then we'll get into improving communications. We'll talk specifically about the Truckee area, as well as in general, the areas to the northeast, east, and southeast that we work. In that improving communications discussion, we'll talk about frequency usage and limitations, understanding surveillance limitations, specific communication information for IFR flying, and then follow through. So that would be terminating flight following and canceling IFR. And then at the end, we'll do I have a few frequently asked questions on here in an open forum, and I know Steve probably has some questions too that he'll talk about, or some frequently asked questions he's prepared for. Yeah.
Please take 2 steps to the left.
Left.
Your left, and then like 1 step towards the owl.
It's good?
That's good.
In the view? All right. All right.
Now everyone sees you.
Okay, sweet.
Sound great, bud.
Thank you. So Oakland Center, we have 5 areas of specialty. We have the east area, south area. This is Pacific or PAC South, and then the north area. These are our low sectors. I'll show you another slide that'll have it a little bit clearer. And then we also have all of this outlined in green here, Hawaii being here, Guam being here. We work just about the entire Pacific Ocean. So we have 3 domestic and 2 oceanic areas. We cover 9.7% of the Earth's surface in our building in Fremont. It's a fun little fact, but we have just under 19 million square miles of airspace responsibility we have. So it's a lot of airspace. This is our little domestic airspace right there, and then this is all oceanic. So each domestic area has 3 low and 3 high radar sectors. The lows are anywhere between surface to 23 to surface to 29,000 feet generally, and then the high altitudes are above those. So this is our low sector layout. So the different colors relate to different areas of specialty. So the green over here is who you guys are talking to around Truckee. The blue outlines are the sector outlines, and you can see this is on a low altitude IFR chart for those familiar. So you have military airspace highlighted here. So these are our low sectors here, 44, surface to 23,000 feet. Truckee's right about there. This is all NorCal approaches airspace right here with Reno right around there, Mustang VOR, where all these airways go to. So our airspace, again, surface to 23,000 feet here, and then surface to 29,000 feet all around here. And then if you guys are flying down south to LA, this sector here, different area, but they work down below 19,000 feet. Navy Lemoore is right here, Fresno approach is right here, and all of this here is NorCal approach, just to see, so you can see a little reference there. These are our high altitude sectors. So again, same controllers, but work 3 low, 3 high. These are in our area, our 3 high sectors here, working over Bishop and Mammoth, which is here, 30,000 feet and above, mostly San Francisco, Las Vegas sequencing, and everyone coming from, this is Salt Lake Center here, coming from the East Coast, going into the West, landing in the Bay Area or wherever it is going to come through this general area. So that's just a brief overview of our sectors, our areas of specialization. Specifically about ZOA or en route, we use a radar equipment called ERAM, or en route automation modernization. It's a hard word to say. We have 12-second updates. So when we are talking to you, we basically see a history of you that updates every 12 seconds. NorCal has 1-second updates. So they have a lot more tools and rules that we'll go over a little bit later. But in general, like our information is a little older. We do receive that data from multiple radar feeds and ADS-B feeds. So we're getting all of that from different surveillance data types. We do have some areas of reduced surveillance limitations in that even with ADS-B, especially near the Mammoth area or near Bridgeport, if you guys are familiar, on that side of the Sierras there, and then up by Susanville, a lot of times we have areas of low radar coverage, so that may impact. We have various RCAG sites or radio sites located in Northern California and Nevada. For Sector 44, our radio sites are located at Palisades or Squaw Valley or Squaw Peak. We have Sacramento, and then we have one at Angels Camp, which is at Columbia Airport. So that's how we talk to you at the sector that works over this airspace. But on the east, we have sites at Reno, Fallon, Tonopah, and Bishop. We use multiple frequencies. So if you're flying through, especially early morning, late at night, you may hear us talking, and you may say, I can barely hear them. But then when we talk to you, you hear us clear as day. And that's because we have multiple transmitters that we're constantly switching between. I might be talking to an aircraft on the ground at Bishop, and then you may be on the very north side of the sector. And so you can't hear me when I'm talking on the ground at Bishop, or maybe you can hear it, but it's very staticky. So that is one of the communication issues that occur, right? That we do have multiple, and that's just one sector. When we start combining multiple sectors, now we have 3 or 4 different frequencies going at once, each frequency having 3 or 4 different transmitters. So there's a lot of switching, talking airplanes on different frequencies. That definitely is a factor that you'll hear, especially like West Coast centers. Frequency limitations due to terrain. If you're ever flying down from here to Mammoth, and you're flying down anything below 14,000 feet, you probably lost us on radio, right? Now we do know the radio will get better because we have a transmitter at Bishop, but that is definitely a complex, a piece of complexity we have, both as controllers recognizing where we might lose you and letting you know, to terminate your services, or giving you a heads up, or sometimes not catching you in time. And thinking we have a little bit more time. Arrivals into Minden are kind of notorious. IFR arrivals into Minden, we know we're going to lose them at a certain point. If you get busy and you forget to talk to them before they're below your radio coverage, now they're on an approach. You can't tell them the cancellation procedure and all that. So those are all just different pieces of communication, specifically with the radio that we deal with. Here's me modeling. Fair traffic control doesn't ever work out. Hopefully modeling's up there. But this is working one of our sectors. So this is on our floor. This picture I use as a ability to kind of show you our ERAM workstation, or what we're doing at work. This is the situational display. This is our EDST, so ERAM decision support tool. That's our strips. When you call for an IFR, this is where we're going to find that information over here. It's going to have your call sign, type aircraft, altitude information, route information, remarks. We don't run flight strips in the center, so this is where all of that data information is. You could see these two. If you kind of barely see it, but you can see these two little red. That'll show us that there's a conflict. So at some point, multiple aircraft here are going to be in conflict, so that's just a tool to help you, recognize it and solve those conflicts. It also shows us military airspace that's active. If you're flying IFR, it'll show us you routed through military airspace. This is where we talk to you. This is how we communicate with the transmitters, change different receivers, all that. This is guard, so we can hear all the meows on guard that hopefully you guys aren't doing, but most likely SkyWest pilots. But so that's kind of how we communicate to you guys there, and that's pretty much the ERAM workstation. This is what the ERAM position looks like. So all of our altimeter information that we get, it's hourly altimeter we get. We don't get the 1-minute weather or constant updates the way NorCal Approach does. And then this is just kind of what we're looking at. Again, this is Reno Approach. This is Fallon Approach over here. Navy Fallon's right there. Reno's right there. Truckee's right here. Palisades VOR's right there. So just to see what we see. And this is the line between NorCal Approach and Oakland Center. The blue that you see there, the dots are weather. So we showed moderate precipitation and above. So all these blue areas are moderate precipitation. And then where you can kind of see it gets a little bit lighter in color down here, that would be heavier extreme precipitation is how we depict that. South Lake Tahoe Airport's right here. Minden, Carson City, just so you could see. In this specific instance is a midnight shift that I'm working. And I'm working, Seattle Center's up here, Salt Lake's here. All of this is my airspace, and I'm just one controller working it all. So if you're flying VFR to Truckee at that time, I'm also talking airplanes from Los Angeles Center down here. Nellis is over here. So we're, all of that. It's a lot of airspace at once, but we combine and decombine based off of traffic volume. This is what a data block looks like. So just to kind of run through it real quick, call sign, altitude. The C means you're at your assigned altitude. This is our CID, or computer identification number, how we can quickly type information in to be able to move the data block around, edit information. This is the ground speed, and then this is the type aircraft. This is what we separate from, that beacon slash, the center of it is what we're separating from. When you guys are flying around, it's probably a dot because it just means reduced separation with ADS-B, and we can use 3 miles instead of 5 miles in that case. Here you could see assigned airspeed, so Mach numbers assigned there, Mach 78, Mach 80. And then this little white box there indicates the aircraft is CPDLC equipped. So if you're CPDLC equipped, we get that and we can basically text the pilots, which is pretty cool. And then this green indicator is our voice communication indicator. If you ever hear us ask if you're on frequency, it's because we don't have this marked, and that's essentially what that means. Just briefly talked about the ERAM decision support tool. Here's what the departure list looks like. So you can see if you have an IFR clearance filed, it's going to show up down here with these Reno and Sacramento's. It would show Truckee, and then once you call up and request it, I look down here, I'd enter a keyboard command, depart the flight, and then it would activate your flight plan. We can also look up, like if, let's say it's in the future, it's 3 hours ahead, I can look it up here. If it's not populated, I can search for it in that case as well. This is just what it looks like. This is how we manage our ground-to-ground and air-to-ground. So if you hear that we're on the landline, we're probably talking to another controller or telling a really good story. But let's just say we're talking to another controller on the landline. But that's normally what that is. So there's a lot going on in, when at a position. Could be talking to Steve at the tower. We'll go into a little bit what we talk about over the landline too in this. But I could be talking to NorCal Approach. I could be talking to flight data, flight service, issuing clearance off of Mammoth. There's a ton of things that could be going on that even though it sounds quiet on frequency, the controller could be doing a lot of extra stuff behind the scenes. I have a couple slides in here that talk about minimum IFR altitudes. This is something that comes up a lot in these presentations because I know our information and our minimum IFR altitudes or minimum vectoring altitudes are different than what are published on IFR charts. They do change. That's why they don't get published, because they do change. This is just an example of some of our current ones, and I wanted to kind of provide it. And then I do talk a little bit more about, or I do go a little more in depth later on about IFR departures in this area, or VFR to IFR clearances. So you can see here around Truckee, directly over Truckee, it's 11,000 feet is our minimum IFR altitudes, where it gets lower west over the valley, right? And over Blue Canyon, which is right here, it starts to go down. You can see right here, we have a peak. Was that Mount Rose? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Mount Rose is right there. So that's that 12,600, which is kind of the highest we have. And then on the next slide here, it has a little bit larger range. So up north, you could see 88 November Victor, so Black Rock City Airport. You could see we have some of the terrain issues, but it's particularly down south off the screen here. We have some like 15,000 foot boxes as you're going towards Mammoth and all that. The reason I include this here is so you could see that when we only descend you 11 or we tell you leaving an altitude, we legally can't assign a turn or course guidance below the minimum IFR altitude if you're in the air. So, I'll go over specific stuff in the frequently asked questions. But one of the situations I've had was a Truckee departure IFR and the airport's IMC. And let's say there's a layer, let's say the layers the ceiling's at 9,000. There was a glider. This is back when the Truck 5 departure, Truck 4 departure was more commonly used. There's a glider right over Truck at 10,000 feet. We had an IFR departure who's going direct Truck. They are in at 9,000 feet or just below 9,000, and they get an RA, right? A resolution advisory TCAS to descend. They ask for a turn. I legally cannot issue a turn. If I turn you, I give you a heading, and then something happens, I am fully liable to that. We're trained from day one. That is the one thing you can't do is give a turn below the MIA. So it's an awareness piece where we understand that a pilot has to do what you have to do to, exercise safety of flight. Essentially, they wanted them to hold at Truck and keep getting an RA with this glider and never be able to climb above them, right? So, the pilot at some point said, hey, I'm turning left to this heading to get away from traffic. At that point, we're just going to issue a low altitude alert. And I'll go into that a little bit further, but that's why I bring this up. I want to talk about it because terrain is such an important thing. And when we talk about communication, specifically communication with terrain, understanding what our limitations are and also what we can do to help you or provide and what we understand is going on versus, what you need. You're never going to hear us at 10,000 feet over Truckee say fly heading if you're IFR, because we legally can't. But there are ways we can help you, and we can give you that as much information as we have while you're exercising pilot's authority. Just briefly talk about sector duties. So what we're doing, we're feeding multiple approach controls. So NorCal, Fresno, Bakersfield, Santa Barbara, Fallon, Navy Lemoore, Nellis, and Joshua Control Facility. We also provide approach control at Oakland Center to 5 towered airports. It's Napa, Santa Rosa, Chico, Redding, and Truckee. And we have a significant number of uncontrolled airports as well. We provide VFR flight following. This time of year, there's a lot of photo missions, especially for snow surveys over the Sierra Nevada. And then we do sequencing as well, primarily for San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, LA, and Vegas. And then we also sequence to Sacramento, Reno, Phoenix, and Seattle. And route deconfliction, weather, turbulence, deviations, those types of things are kind of the daily tasks of what we're doing, as well as military operations, which are very high out here. And kind of complexities, just to talk about briefly. Obviously, as you guys know, high terrain adds added complexity for pilots as well as controllers, right? We talked about minimum IFR altitudes, ties our hands on what we can do a lot of times. Weather over the Sierras, the snow, the thunderstorms in the summer, those are all factors that play into our daily workload. Complex military airspace and training activity, right? We have Navy Fallon, which is where Top Gun is located. We have Lemoore, we have Joshua Control Facility at Edwards Air Force Base in the restricted area complex down there. And then we have Nellis, right? Red Flag, those types of events that we support. We have multiple MOAs, different refueling airspace that we work in our airspace. So there's a huge mix of traffic that we're working at any given time. We talked about controller-to-controller coordination, multiple frequencies, and then increased VFR operations in the summer. As you guys are intimately familiar with, there's a lot of glider activity, a lot of firefighting TFRs in operations. Parachute jump activity and increased VFR flights and requests are all things that we see more frequently in the summer. Okay, so to talk specifically about improving pilot and controller communication. Number one is understand frequency, usage, and limitations. We talked a little bit early on about frequency usage, right? What our limitations are because of terrain where we may or may not be able to hear you or where that may be. Pilots aren't expected to know where all those spots are, but understanding when you're flying through and you're noticing, you're starting to lose the controller, or if you do a route very often and you notice you always lose a controller for about 30 miles, understanding that, and also understanding if you do go NORDA or if you do lose that controller, you are lost comms, what you should do, right? We'll talk a little bit more about that too, specifically if you're flying VFR and what it means if you never hear the words, squawk VFR. We'll talk about multiple frequencies and radio sites. Controller, again, on the other frequency a lot. At 44, I may be on, we have a separate frequency for South Lake Tahoe for clearance delivery. I may be giving a clearance to an aircraft on the ground there, and you may be trying to call me, and that's why I'm busy, because I'm listening to a readback or I'm hearing a clearance, and you're not hearing anything right away. So monitoring frequencies, kind of understanding what's going on is a huge way to cut down on some of the back and forth. Understanding surveillance limitations. We talked about limited radar coverage and outages, as well as lack of ADS-B ground stations and outages. And just when you hear radar service terminated, when you hear I lost you on radar, I should pick you up in 20 miles, just kind of what that means. And it means that we don't have great surveillance in that area. It means, make sure we wouldn't see additional traffic if you're flying VFR. So it's the whole see and avoid. And you may not receive an ADS-B in on an aircraft that's flying down there where there's no ADS-B coverage. So it's just one thing to just be aware of, heightened awareness. And then communicate directly and efficiently. Hey, you, this is me, this is what I want, right? I think that's something that we've all heard in flight training, but I teach it to my students as a controller constantly, right? A lot of controllers, especially in the center environment, don't have aviation background. I have controllers in my area that have never flown in an airplane. So there is definitely a knowledge gap at times. So things like this of being concise and direct with what you want helps us out a lot when there's a lot going on. It also gives us the ability to respond and accommodate requests in a much more quick fashion. And never be afraid to ask for clarification. One thing I hear a lot, especially from like newer student pilots when I do these, are people saying that they're nervous talking to controllers, or they were monitoring and they heard a controller chew out a pilot. And the thing is that does happen, right? And there are some controllers that are a little bit more, quick to correct than others. But we're all here for the same reason, for safety, right? And as controllers, we're here to do a job. If something happens, if a controller does get frustrated on frequency, it shouldn't be discouraging. Always ask for clarification. And I'm one of the ones that will say, thanks for asking if you're double checking, because I'd rather you double check than be afraid to double check and then blow through an altitude or do something that could be catastrophic, right? So this is definitely one of those things to take home with communication. Always be sure, right? Always be intentional. And if you're not sure, always double check. For IFR flying, understand the MIAs and altitude requirements. So obviously, minimum IFR altitude, so MEAs on your routes. The minimum IFR altitudes charted on the low altitude IFR charts. Understand those. Ensure you're aware and file for an altitude that will comply with MIAs along your whole route of flight. If you are flying from Truckee to Mammoth and you file at 10,000 feet, right? You're creating a lot of workload for the controller to now figure out what altitude is good for your whole route of flight and ensure safety. So when in doubt, make sure that you're capable of flying at an altitude that is above what is charted as the minimum IFR altitude for your route of flight. We talked about it and we'll talk about it more. Controllers cannot issue turns below the MVA for IFR aircraft. So understand that. When you're climbing out of an airport, understand that you're not going to get any route guidance from the controller until you're above the minimum IFR altitude. Review MOAs, restricted areas, and other special use airspace. So when you're filing direct, without considering military airspace, it increases workload on ATC, again, for IFR flying. We always see that Gulfstream off of Monterey that files direct Dallas-Fort Worth through 30 different military airspaces, and it takes normally, that aircraft, that same pilot will always be like, we got 30 reroutes because I'm only rerouting you around the military airspace that I know about. The next controller is going to route you about the military around the airspace that they know about, and you're going to get 30 reroutes because instead of just going to ForeFlight and filing the best route and just filing that, because 9 times out of 10 that's the best route, right? I don't think it's anyone in this room probably, but just be aware of that, right? I'm not saying you can't file direct from here to Mather, right? But if you are filing a flight plan and there's military airspace or route complexities, or NorCal is going to issue this route every time, file that route. It makes it easier for controllers. It decreases our workload, and it helps that out a lot. On the other side of that, always expect reroutes. You can't foresee everything. So you could file a route that works 9 days out of 10, but there could be some military airspace that's not really active that often, that's active today, and you get rerouted around it. If you're flying, if anyone in here flies turboprops or like TBMs, Pilatus, anything like that, you're going to see a lot of times those aircraft get rerouted because of sector volume. A sector that would normally work in aircraft can't work in aircraft because of volume, and generally the first airplane type of aircraft that they take out of that airspace, especially in LA Center, is going to be turboprops. So turboprops might get a reroute, you might get an altitude cap, specifically because it's volume, increased volume in the en route environment. Every facility may have a slightly separate requirement. So I may have a letter of agreement with NorCal Approach, and they may have a letter of agreement or a standard operating procedure how they deliver aircraft within their own facility. So you may get multiple reroutes because I may only be required to send you direct to a point, and they may have to give you an airway after that point. So just expect that when you fly IFR. And if you're always prepared for a reroute, always prepared with a pen and paper or an iPad or whatever it is, it helps a lot. And then communicate. Always ask questions. Weather and other factors change in flight, right? And we have more real-time information. I've had multiple times where I think information that I gave a pilot, because of them asking, change their entire perspective, right? Hey, I was planning on going through this gap because I show all this weather, and I say, actually, you're going to go right through where the weather's moving to. It's now clear over Minden. You'd be better off going this way. And those are the types of things that you can ask us that we can help you with. It also, turbulence. There's turbulence forecast, but a lot of times that's not accurate, or it says moderate turbulence, 10,000 feet to 30,000 feet, and we know there's only one altitude where that's actually true. So those types of things are things that we can help with, but we need to know that you need that information. All right, canceling. So this is going to be canceling services, both VFR and IFR. So when you're receiving flight following, always cancel with ATC before switching frequency or changing squawk code. It's very important. Any aircraft that is not terminated, so if you don't hear the term and you don't repeat the term squawk VFR, radar service terminated when we give that to you, we will track you down. And I don't mean that in an ominous way, but we have to know that you're safe. So we'll track your flight. We will not remove your flight plan. Once it looks like you land, typically the FBO will get called, and they'll be looking, hey, did this aircraft land? Are they on the ground safely? And then we can close out. If we can't get that information and assure that you're down safe, we're required to follow search and rescue procedures. So we will issue what's called an ALNOT, and they will track from your route of flight to your destination. I think it's 50 miles on either side, and it will be significant resources to make sure you're safe, right? Make sure you always cancel your flight following, and if you don't hear, give us a call once you get on the ground, either on frequency if you can reach us, or the phone number in the chart supplement, and let us know, hey, we couldn't hear the controller, we squawked VFR, but we're down safe at Mammoth or whatever it is. When you're on IFR flight plan, if you fail to cancel your IFR or close your flight plan, this could result in closing an airport and airspace around the airport. This is a very, very common thing. This happens every single day. Pilot lands and they don't cancel IFR right away. Someone else is holding, waiting to get in. Because it's an untowered airport, I can't let that aircraft land because I have to treat the airport one in, one out until I get an IFR cancellation. We have a scheduled airline service into Bishop, SkyWest. They are notorious for this, right? The airlines, because they're used to flying into towered airports. So when an airline flies into an untowered airport, they are notorious for forgetting to cancel. So we will generally tell them 3 or 4 times, don't forget, right? And cancel on the ground. There's no harm in that, especially if you want to make sure for your safety. But just make sure when you do get on the ground that you cancel, you call us promptly, and try to do that as quickly as possible. Same thing. If we're unable to verify you've landed, we must initiate search and rescue. I think we have the Mammoth the Mammoth Airport or Bishop Airport, I don't remember which one, airport manager after hours guy on speed dial, because every midnight shift I work at about 3 or 4 in the morning, it's pretty common that we'll have, an aircraft that doesn't cancel. And the operations manager will call him and he'll be like, hey, Brian, I'm going to go head over to the airport, see if they're there, at 3 in the morning, right? So it's not the end of the world, but understand that if you're able to cancel promptly, it does help us, ensure that you're safe and allow the airport to be reopened. So communications for some Truckee specific items. So Truckee Towers equipment does not directly interact with ERAM, which is our equipment that we used. So unlike flying out of maybe Livermore, for example, where you can get flight following requests on the ground, they can put it in the computer, it transfers right up to NorCal. Steve and I don't have that luxury. So if you file an IFR flight plan, I see it, but Steve won't. He can get the information through FlightAware and stuff, but he won't get it directly through the FAA's system. Departures. All IFR clearance is verbally passed from center to tower. So you call for an IFR clearance, and Steve's going to say, stand by, your clearance on request. Steve has to give me a call, and I have to have the time to sit there, find the flight plan, read the IFR clearance. Again, typically also while working the sector. Sometimes we have a second person there to help when it's busy. But I read the clearance to Steve. Steve then just reads what I read to him verbally, to you, and same thing goes for release. Steve can't see or input flight following data, and again, can't see what I see in my computer for the IFR departures. For arrivals, all IFR arrival information is verbally passed from the center to tower. I have to manually call Steve on the phone. It's a shout line, but I have to call him and say, hey, I have an arrival. It's a citation, 10 minutes out for visual approach runway 29er. I have to give him that information, and he jots it down on a flight strip, so he has that when the IFR arrival comes in. And this is a frequently asked question, but when VFR arrivals are told radar service terminated in squawk VFR, it's so we can comply with rules regarding the towers without certified radar displays, right? I have to notify you that we're no longer providing radar service. Your VFR, you squawk VFR. Again, there's no radar system in the tower for Steve to see the squawk code, although you do have some surveillance equipment in there for ADS-B, which is helpful, but it's not certified, and it doesn't talk to the FAA's systems. Canceling IFR. Because Truckee's a towered airport, you're not required to cancel IFR here if the tower is open. We've had a few times where someone lands right after the tower closes and then might forget because it's something when you're used to landing. So just remember to cancel if the tower's closed, but otherwise you're not required to. However, during periods of high traffic, IFR traffic may experience increased delays due to IFR separation requirements. Pilots may find it more advantageous to proceed VFR in good weather. It's a little bit of a cheat code, right? If you're capable and the weather's clear and you cancel IFR and it's busy, it means you're going to less likely get delayed. It doesn't mean you have to. It doesn't mean we need you to or want you to. It just means the delays are generally a little higher because we have, depends on the situation, but we have stricter separation requirements between multiple IFR aircraft. A lot of times I can only clear you in once either I get an arrival from Steve on the first arrival or you see that preceding aircraft and I can tell you to follow them. But it's about a 15 miles gap we normally shoot between arrivals at Truckee. So I want to get at least 15 to 20 miles between each arrival. VFR, there's no requirement, right? Steve's going to sequence the VFR aircraft as they come in, and so that's just an awareness thing. But again, there's no harm in flying IFR and not canceling, even if it's a beautiful day like today. Just understand what that might mean when it's busier. Absolutely.
If we cancel IFR, like, is it easy for you to switch that code over to flight following?
Yeah, yes, we just use the same code. I literally type a button, which is altitude assignment, and I type VFR, and that's it. So and that's how I know that you're VFR. Okay, we're going to go into, I have a few frequently asked questions here, and then we're going to do an open forum and if Steve has anything to add. But the first thing I have is, does ATC prefer pilots to receive flight following or fly VFR when a 1200 code in Class Echo airspace? So it is generally preferred for pilots to receive flight following. This allows controllers to have direct communication with aircraft to provide separation services. It is a lot easier for me to separate two airplanes that I'm talking to than two airplanes when I'm only talking to one. It's very hard to separate when I'm not talking to either. But when I'm talking to at least one, at least I can, but I don't know what the other aircraft's doing. I could issue a turn thinking, hey, I'm going to turn this aircraft to stay away. And that aircraft sees the other guy on ADS-B and he says, oh, I'm going to turn, to avoid. And then they just point towards each other. But if I'm talking to both, Truckee's a perfect example. I can literally say, remain north of 80, remain south of 80, and they're separated, right? If you're going over Blue Canyon or whatever it is, it can be that simple. If I'm talking to two airplanes. If I'm not talking to you, then yes, it could mean that, but it also means IFR traffic. I might be stopping IFR traffic because I don't know what you're doing, so I might use a 4,000 or 5,000 foot buffer in case you're fast moving, climbing, and I'm not talking to you. I also haven't verified the mode C altitude, right? When you get flight following and we say radar contact, we'll normally ask, say, altitude. That's so we can verify the mode C. If it's a 1200 code or a VFR aircraft flying around, I don't know that mode C is accurate, so I'm not allowed to assume it is. So if I have two targets that are going to merge, even if they're 7,000 feet apart, and one of them is a 1200 code, I don't know that. So my job is to not let the targets merge because I don't know that for sure that aircraft's. We've had Cessna 172s flying around that show their level at flight level 225. I guarantee you they're not. Getting up there. But it's because sometimes there are mode C issues or ADS-B, different transponder issues that could lead to that misinformation. So it's always beneficial to get flight following. That being said, there are definitely times the ATC workload may be too high to accept flight following requests. A lot of times that's not even working at VFR aircraft as much as it is taking the time to get all the information I need to get from you when I have 6 or 7 other things that I need to do right now. So that you'll hear me say, call me back in 10 minutes, call me back in 2 minutes, something like that. or if I got your call sign, I'll write it down and say, hey, November 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll get back to you in a couple minutes, right? But remember that flight following is considered a low workload item. So if we're very, very busy with IFR traffic and you call requesting flight following, you may hear stand by or I'll get back to you, or hey, the next frequency is here, give them a call, I won't be able to help you out today. It doesn't mean you shouldn't still call, right? Have awareness, maintain situational awareness, monitor frequencies, make sure it's a good time to chime in. If it seems extremely busy, right, just maintain situational awareness, fly VFR, and use good judgment. How should I call ATC when requesting flight following? Another very commonly asked question. I will admit, though, that this isn't a blanket. You do this every time, and every controller is going to be happy with you. I presented this at Livermore maybe a couple months ago, and I had one guy go, hey, I did that exact same thing yesterday, and the controller at NorCal yelled at me. So disclaimer, you may still get an angry controller that doesn't like it no matter what. But I have found in my time working and also with talking to other controllers that this seems to be the most universally accepted way to request flight following. So the first thing is Oakland Center, November 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, over Empire Airport, 9,500 VFR request. So what you're giving me is your call sign, so I can get you a squawk code. You're telling me where you are, so I know where to look and I can radar identify you. And you're telling me what altitude you're at, so I can see if there are multiple targets in the area. I can pinpoint who you are. What this does not have or omits is type, aircraft, and destination, right? So then I will say, squawk, whatever, go ahead with your request, at which point you'll tell me you're a Cessna 182 Skyline requesting flight following to San Carlos. So why this workflow works good is because for me is, again, I'm getting the information. If you tell me all of this in one go, it's fine, but I guarantee you I'm not hearing it. I'm not remembering it all. Maybe there are controllers that have way better brains than I do, but I will get where you're at. But once I start hearing type, aircraft, and destination, even if I hear it and I go to type it, I'm normally like, I don't remember what you said. And sometimes, I just eight or nine flight following requests in 10 or 15 minutes. So it's because I'm hearing, I was like, did he say San Carlos, or was it the last guy that said San Carlos? So this is a good way to, when I'm asking you to go ahead with your request, I'm now typing the information I need to type as you're telling me. Now, some controllers, again, they want you to give everything, but if you default to this, this is way better than the cold call of just call sign, because then I don't know where to look. I don't know what to do next. When you just say call sign, it really doesn't help me out at all. But if you tell me at least where you are and what you're asking for, then I can start the process. I know to get you a squawk code, and then we can move on. So the cold call is about 5 or 6 back and forth transmissions. You could see here, there's only 3. So it's a very, 4 when I identify you, but it's a lot more straightforward. Controller says radar contact lost, say altitude. What does that mean? It means you've exited our radar coverage for generally being a little too low for what we can see. With ADS-B, this happens less than 10 years ago. But if we anticipate we will not be able to see you again, we'll have you squawk VFR since we can't provide radar advisories. If we anticipate we'll pick you back up shortly, we'll keep you and notify you. So if we say, hey, I lost you on radar service terminated, squawk VFR, suggest next controller, it's not because we don't want to talk to you. It's because we know we won't be able to provide a service. And even if I see you off and on, I'm not going to be able to tell you about anyone below you because I'm not going to see them either. So it is one of those where you might hear that. Again, we'll generally try and tell you who the next controller to call is, or whether it's me, when you can call me again. So you might hear that. If you're flying VFR and lose communication with ATC, if you no longer need flight following, just squawk VFR. We will see that if you're in an area of radar coverage. So we'll feel less concerned because we'll see you squawk VFR. But we will still have to track you down more or less. So attempt to reestablish contact with ATC. If you can't, then when you land, call flight service or the phone number for the center. It's normally provided in the chart supplement. And then if you need any services or experience an emergency during that period, squawk 7700 and transmit on guard. Sometimes our guard transmitters are in better places than our actual transmitters, so we may be able to hear you on guard. A worst case scenario, an overflying aircraft will definitely be able to hear you on guard. So if you're ever experiencing an emergency, even if you don't have radio coverage, always squawk 7700, always go to guard. But if you're not, just remember to let us know, hey, I lost you on radar or radio. I never heard you say squawk VFR. I squawked VFR on my own, but I just want to let you know I'm safe on the ground at wherever. It's a helpful tool, and it saves a lot of time. You depart IFR and request an early turnout to avoid traffic or weather ahead. ATC says below the MIA, what should I do? Again, to reiterate from earlier, I cannot legally assign a heading or a vector to an IFR aircraft below the MVA. The pilot in command is responsible for the safe operation of their aircraft. If you need to turn below the MIA, notify ATC that you are doing so, and we'll likely respond with a low altitude alert. That's just a standard practice, what we're required to do to let you know. Low altitude alert, the lowest, the minimum IFR altitude in your area is 1,000. And so hey, there is terrain out there. That's what I see. But we also understand you have to do what you have to do. Gliders hang around in weird spots all over our airspace. We see it all day long. It just is a nature of the beast. Sometimes weather pops up right over truck, and aircraft says, I know I can turn out now to Palisades and I need to for weather, but you're not going to hear me say approved. But just know that we understand. We know that what that means, and then we're going to do our job. And then once you're clear of it and you're above the minimum IFR altitude, we'll likely come back and say clear direct to whatever point. Is it better if I depart VFR, pick up IFR in the air, or if I just pick it up on the ground? Very common question. Completely depends on the pilot. A lot of times pilots do this to try and, especially jet pilots, try to do this to get out of an airport a lot faster. But what happens is a lot of times if the airport, Truckee and Tahoe is a great example during July 4th weekend and the Tahoe Celebrity Pro-Am, right? All of that, significant increased operations here and at South Lake. Once we get you in the air, there's a good chance we can't give you an IFR right away because we have a lot of IFR traffic and we may not be able to. Now we'll talk to you, but if you're gonna fly right into weather, you probably should have stayed on the ground, right? But if it's clear blue and you're fine flying VFR for 100 or 200 miles if you need to, then yeah, depart VFR is totally fine. Just understand what the limitations are. I may not be able to give you an IFR right away, but if you're cool with that, then there's no problem departing VFR.
Just add that, you prefer we get a squawk code from the tower, Steve?
If you have an IFR flight plan, it doesn't hurt. I don't know if there's any people on our end that won't give it to you. Pretty much everyone will give you one.
Unless we're real busy, we'll go ahead and try and get it for you.
Yeah, so if Steve has time, he'll call us and we'll just look at your IFR flight plan. We'll see the code on there and then we'll just give him that code.
Mind you, I'm not going to call him for a flight following code, but if you have one filed already, then I'll ask for it most of the time.
The flight following, you just give us a call in the air. But okay, questions? Did you have anything you wanted to cover first? Or?
Real quick, just on when it comes to the codes, he says we can't see your squawk codes, which is true, but if you were to squawk 7600, 7700, it's going to pop up on their scope and they're going to call me. So just do it. Even though I wouldn't see it, just do it. Center will call me. So just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Are there ever any plans to correct or fix these communication deficiencies between Truckee Tower and Oakland Center? So
the question is, are there any plans to correct the deficiencies with the communication with Truckee Tower? Well, I'll let Steve and probably Jeff even talk to this a little bit. But for the Oakland Center piece, right, the difficulty is largely in the fact that Truckee is a non-federal contract tower, which is very unusual. It's fantastic, right? I think working with these guys, we're some of the luckiest en route controllers in the country. But now that Larry's gone, so no, I'm just joking. The truth is, equipment and tools are a little harder to come by because of the political aspect of it, more or less. We make do. I think the system we have works pretty good, and I hope that it is improved in the future. But as controllers, we work with what we got, and I think there are controllers in parts of the country that have a lot worse than us as far as coverage. With ADSB, our surveillance coverage has improved dramatically over the last few years. Having a shout line with them, and they have new radio equipment in the tower over the last few years. That's been fantastic. So we've done a lot of stuff that has actually improved what we already, had. But some things are just kind of sort of outside of our control.
Some of the information he's talking about, because we're non-federal contract, we aren't able to access it. So it makes a difference. So that's why he's talking about something like if I don't have a way of putting in a code for you guys. So that's why that's probably not going to change.
And there are federal contract towers
Yeah.
that are FAA funded that don't.
Right.
So it's not like Truckee's by itself with the lack of equipment. We have multiple towers in our airspace. Truckee's the only non-federal, but multiple FCTs in our airspace that do not have FDIOs, which is the computer system to put in the squawk codes and stuff. So it's not a unique problem with this airport. It's just one of the challenges.
We have tried, and for all the reasons stated, the FAA said we're not going to do it. And even there are, I believe, some federal non-contract towers. We don't have enough air traffic for them to do it. So it's not a decision of we didn't want it. We've tried between the shout line and the ATC ground stations, which the airport district is paid for, as well as $1 million a year for Midwest ATC to be there on the airfield. We've done about everything we can do within our span of control, what we can do with the money at least.
The ADSB has helped dramatically as far as keeping delays down. When I first got here, we didn't have that. And there was times somebody got bad weather, somebody departs off South Lake, and we got to wait until they're clear because that's all part of the same airspace. Now it's not a problem. These guys are just big difference, just amazing. See, so easy to work with. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Question, sorry, this one came in from Zoom a while ago, but this is for Chucky Chower. Is it better to say holding short 2-9 or ready for departure?
I would say you're ready for departure, but be prepared to hold short at 2-9 and repeat it back. Okay? Okay?
Yes, sir.
Using flight following, going from here down to the Bay Area, when I get to NorCal, they always ask my destination. Why don't they get that data?
So the question was, why does NorCal re-ask for my destination when I get from, and I'm repeating for Zoom, just so you know, but and for the people in the back. But that is actually, Lee, had this problem, brought this up to me a while ago. So Oakland Center and NorCal use different equipment. NorCal uses STARS. STARS doesn't have the same data block information that ERAM shows, and it is highly dependent on paper flight strips. So NorCal nowadays does not generally run, they don't run flight strips. Some controllers do, sometimes they have the ability to, but a lot of times they're just looking at the information in your data block and they may not see that destination airport code sharing. So they're asking you, I put the flight plan in, it's in the system, you can look on probably on FlightAware and it's going to show up, but the problem is they don't have a way to see that on their data block without physically requesting a flight strip, which they can do. So it's just, I think, maybe a little easier just to ask you because I'm already talking to you versus me have them print a flight strip and figure out where you're going. Tends to be why I think that happens. But
Just initial contact to tell them the destination. They know they're going to ask.
and that's probably a good technique, right? Just to reiterate, is that, again, not that they don't have that information or we don't pass that information. It's just they don't have a as easy way to view that information that we have. I can see all your flight plan information just with the click of a button with ERAM, but STARS that NorCal uses does not have that benefit. And Larry was at NorCal, so.
I worked at NCT at NorCal for 8 years in the Sacramento area, and we took over the Reno airspace. And the only IFR strips, the only strips we had were IFR departures off of the airports. We did not have any en route strips or any arrival strips, which for me it was difficult coming from Reno. If I assigned an altitude, I'd write that on the flight progress strip on the arrivals, and when I clicked it for the instant approach or visual approach, I put that down as well. But I get over to NCT and it's like, no, Finny, you can't use strips.
That's probably why they're asking. They do have the ability to ask a flight data specialist if they have one staffed to do what's called a full route, and then they can pull that up. But why, when they can just say your destination? So,
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Maybe not so much for you, maybe for the staff here. Many years ago, we talked about having a repeater on 118.0 because my predominant flight comes from the east. Last time I was asked by NorCal as I was crossing through their airspace, did you have the weather? I go, no, I probably can't get the weather till I get over North Lake Tahoe. I mean, we seem to have sufficient amount of money. Why can't yeah, repeater's been brought up probably 20 years ago.
I don't know.
I love an honest answer.
Go ahead, Brent.
Squawk P, they're going to get it in Hollister
basis of the question, I understand that, but I just wondered if there was still any effort. I mean, you know, when I was on the board, we tried to push that.
Yeah.
And we thought it was a flight safety issue, right, Mike?
No,
Didn't we do that?
We did. Yeah, but they said no, because it would go too far.
Yeah, no, it'd be bouncing off everywhere.
Yeah.
Gotta be strategically located. But it's a hinder, I mean, I'm over North Lake Tower before I get it, you know, I'm talking with the tower here before I even know what the weather is.
We did do some work last year and it did improve some of the EH broadcasts. It's clearly not enough for it to be significant to get it over there.
So, coming from the Vegas area or Phoenix, from the flight levels, it seems like over the last 3 years, they've started to drop the aircraft much earlier than they used to. And, you know, you're down at 20,000, 18,000, 150 miles out, just burning fuel like a mad dog. Why is that? Is that just they changed the approaches into the bay, or why are they putting it down so early?
So where would you be going to in this case? Is it like here?
Vegas back to here.
Okay. So the short answer is traffic volume and aircraft types. So back, 10, 15 years ago, there's a lot of Southwest 737-700s, 777s going from the Bay. Now it's a lot of Airbus A321s that climb at about above 20,000 feet, about 500 feet a minute in the summer. So what happens is with especially truckee arrivals, we have to get you below all of the Bay departures. And when there's a significant amount of volume or slow climb aircraft, that becomes a challenge. If we don't, we get you in situations where we can't get you down. We get you above traffic. Now, sometimes the other side of that is sometimes it's technique, right? I've been working and, I got burned by not getting an aircraft down low enough to be able to, so I descend them to this altitude every time. But a lot of times if you need pilot's discretion, kind of the cheat code for that area is we get you down at least to 30,000 feet pretty early because that's our high altitude volume sector, 30,000 feet and above. The low altitude sector will descend you to 28 right away, or can. And then at that point, a lot of times once you're below 280, you can get pilot's discretion if you ask for it. So we may not initiate it because we're just trying to, descend. But if you want PD, pilot's discretion, and it's busy, a lot of times we still can accommodate, but it becomes a challenge from the flight levels. So
28.
Normally 28 and below, you're more likely to get it, yeah. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I think one question for each of you maybe. First one's just curiosity for you, Justin. I fly from here to Mammoth frequently, often, almost always below 12,000 in a 182. So I'm very familiar with the little dead spot that you talked about.
Yes.
Is that does our future improve that? Does the government need more time and money to put more equipment out to make that visible, or is it just always going to be that way?
To my knowledge, that area probably will always be that way unless there's a push, likely from like AOPA or GA flying, because that's mostly what's down there is GA flying. And if there was a push from AOPA to increase the surveillance in higher terrain areas, I could see it. I know the FAA is not going to pursue, because in their mind, they have 100% coverage. It's just you just have to be a little higher is the way they look at it, right? But what you're saying is true, and generally what I've seen is AOP probably be the way to go to push that. And the big problem down there is radio coverage, and we're always trying to get better radio coverage. That is something that I'm always fighting for too. Is we just got a UHF transmitter at Squaw Peak, which I fought for 6 years to get. So we finally got it because we'd have those fighters that come out of Fallon, do the lake tour, and we lose them on radio every time when they head back to Fallon. So that's good to have those for those and then the low altitude VFR flying routes, but. As far as actual ADSB equipment, I know that the folks at the airport here have experience with L3 Harris and dealing with some of that. And it's definitely a different animal than the radios. But, I would say if safety is an issue, an AOPA would probably be the route.
Yeah. So it could be done with more budget, more equipment. It's not impossible.
Correct, yeah. Now, whether or not they can find a spot for it is a challenge, right? Because them going out to Palisades or Squaw Peak to do maintenance in the winter is a nightmare. If we lose a radio, it's probably down for the whole winter because they've told us some of how they have to get to that site. So, but yeah, it's definitely possible. It's just definitely take resources. So.
And then for Steve,
Yes, sir.
You mentioned if you lose radio, just call the tower.
Mm.
What's that number?
Oh,
Do we call the airport and press buttons until we get to you, or is there a direct line?
No, there's a direct line. It's 53. What's that?
Yeah.
530-414-1641 is the tower there. If you can't, then get a hold of the airport, and they can relay. They can get a hold of us too. So, yeah. but just call. Yeah, your cell phone. I mean, there's people in here. I know they've called me on the cell phone. Hey, I'm up in Sierraville and the radio's out.
Is that a
So
published number, or should I have written down?
it's published. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Steve, for
Yeah.
you, a bunch of us are now flying these smaller Cubs and kind of coming and going.
I'm jealous.
The short approach sort of concept, how tight would you prefer we keep it to the airport altitudes and the rest? I don't know if there's an airport preference on that, because we can get pretty close to the runway and just come in. Like, I prefer to land long because my hangar's all the way on the other end.
Right.
But I'm sure these other guys got their own techniques. Is there something that you prefer to see, or?
For me, it's more of just what do you need? If you want to land long, let me know. You want to go turn tight midfield, just let me know so I know what you're doing. So that's the only thing. So I can give advisories. And it's safe. That's the whole thing. I mean, you got amazing equipment that does great stuff, and you got control of it. It's wonderful. Use it. And sometimes that can be good. I can cut you in front of somebody. You got somebody coming in over Brockway, and you want to do a short approach, go long landing. I can make it work, no problem. But if I don't know you're doing it, then it could be a problem. So.
Yeah. Does the airport have a position on type kind of pattern work?
You're.
I would say it would default the tower. From safety number one to from I know he's at you're over the airport.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mike's here. Mike does some short patterns and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Time saves flight track. Just as long as tower's good.
I mean, we do a lot. We do everything we can to help out with the noise. It's all about request. This is what's wonderful here. I love this because to me, it's raw air traffic. There's not these procedures to do this, do this, do this, do this. It's a matter of you got a request, see what we can do. Nice part is a lot of you, if you want something, I can't do it, but if you do this, I can make that happen. You do it. It works. So trying to put it as one thing for everything, it's not that way. But yeah, if you need that, and usually if it's in the airport boundary, the noise problem is not a big deal. And that you got especially the Cubs, stuff like that, they're not a problem. So.
Justin, this question came in on Zoom. They were wondering if you see them on ADSB 1200. They're wondering if you see their aircraft type, or is it until they tell you as part of their identification?
We do not see aircraft type. The only thing we can see if we don't have you identified is if you're squawking a discrete code. So any 4-digit code, we can see your call sign that you have registered with the ADSB. And then if you are in conflict alert with another aircraft, even if you're on a 1200 code, we'll see your call sign. So you may hear us after, we had issued traffic to one aircraft, we may ask your call sign if you're on frequency, and that's because when it flashes, we call it flash, but when conflict alert initiates, we see the call sign that's associated with the ADSB. But we don't see type aircraft or any other information other than that.
If you're flying an experimental aircraft, are you expecting it to be identified as an experimental aircraft when we're calling?
It depends. Like RVs, I'd probably want to know that you're an RV and what type RV. I'll normally ask. If it's, I'd say like most experimental aircraft that have an actual identifier that's registered, I would say give us the identifier. If it's extremely experimental aircraft that like I've definitely never heard of, then yeah, maybe experimental is just the easy way to go. But yeah, like I think the majority of experimentals, most of it like RVs, I think most controllers I work with wouldn't even know it's an experimental, or they're just, because we're so used to seeing RVs. So I think, a lot of controllers say, okay, RV10, RV9. So they wouldn't necessarily know, pick it out, the difference.
It's no longer a requirement. Like down in the Bay Area, we were required, I thought, to identify as an experimental in the Bravo airspace.
I can't speak for that because we don't have any Bravo airspaces. But for Oakland Center, definitively, we don't need, if we know your type aircraft, that's all we need to know. Now, if the FARS or the AIM says something different, I don't want to override it because I don't fly experimental aircraft. But from a controller perspective, at least on the en route side, RV7, RV8, or whatever it is. That's all we need to know.
But it's not a normal practice to identify as experimental.
Some people do it.
Yeah.
Some people do.
I worked at San Carlos with the Stars, and put an RV8, it goes in. If you put something else, it may not. So we just put experimental. And
yeah.
You worked with that, Larry.
So I retired in 2015, so it was a while ago.
And I retired.
When I retired, the automation system was getting an upgrade to include it would see the two-type aircraft on final and give the required weight turbulence separation.
This was 11 years ago. It's probably to that point because they just did wake turbulence reclassification recently to where it's now, instead of large 757, 767 heavies and supers, now it's A through H, and each airplane has a different wake turbulence category. And depending on who the leader is, the follower type aircraft, if you're an experimental, you need increased separation behind a 737 or 757, a super. But if you're another 737, you only need 3 miles. But if you're an experimental, so I think an approach controller, and again, 11 years out of the business in the approach world, they might need that as opposed to what Justin does at the center. An experimental works just fine for what he needs. But he has wake turbulence.
Yeah, but we don't have reclass. So
okay.
Yeah, we like approach has, like he said, ours is still simple. It's still 5 miles basically, or 3, 4, 5, or 7 or whatever, but it's pretty standard, and we don't have reclass. So.
Okay.
Yes.
So I simulated a comms failure of a processor, and I could not see the lights from the tower. Do you know how far those lights?
You talking about the light gun itself? You talking about getting a light gun signal?
Yeah.
You couldn't see it from processor? Really?
Have you had other people try that?
Oh, pretty far out. I'm thinking. I mean, I've had it from the truck scales, which is pretty close to processor, and they see it.
I was a little bit beyond. I was over processor.
Yeah. Let's try it again. Let's do it. See what we can do. Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else? Probably stuff you guys want. No, controllers.
We're regular guys.
They'll probably stick around a little bit longer after this, but let's give a round of applause for Steve.
Thank you, Dustin. Thank you.
That's going to wrap things up for tonight. These guys will stick around a little bit longer if you want to ask one-on-one stuff, but otherwise, we'll see you guys next month and enjoy summer vacation.
Yeah. No, you're good.
You're good.